Is honey just the same as sugar? It depends. For a certain type of honey, some of the effects it has on our body may even be the opposite of sugar. What effects am I talking about and what type of honey? Let's find out in this video. Not everyone wants you to know the truth, so I'm here to expose the science and share practical tips on weight loss, fitness, and healthy lifestyle. It's simply put with no BS. Make sure you're subscribed. I'm Ingunn, the Norwegian Viking. Now, honey is mainly made up of two types of sugars called glucose and fructose, about 50-50 each. Now, here's an interesting question. If we were to make a kind of artificial honey that consisted of glucose and fructose in similar amounts as in real honey, would our bodies react the same to that artificial honey as compared with real honey? A lot of people would assume that yes, we would react the same because honey is basically sugar, though it's not that simple. One study did exactly this. They created a kind of artificial honey and then compared different markers in people after consuming either the artificial honey or the real honey. And they had some interesting findings. For instance, in patients with elevated cholesterol, LDL cholesterol, or TG, which is a measure of plasma triglycerides, honey seems to lower TG, cholesterol, and LDL cholesterol, while artificial honey caused elevations of these measurements. So not the same response. Now, fructose, which is one of the main sugars that honey is made up of, has gotten a bad rep, though whether or not fructose is bad for us may actually depend on where it comes from. The study explains it like this. Increasing dietary fructose from 3% to 20% of calories at the expense of starch increased total cholesterol by 9% and LDL cholesterol by 11%. They are referring to a different study here. So basically what they're saying here is that fructose may cause an increase in total cholesterol and LDL cholesterol. But as we just saw, natural honey actually decreased total cholesterol and LDL cholesterol, while artificial honey increased both. And they're both supposed to contain about the same amount of fructose. So what's going on here? The researchers do believe that the fructose in the artificial honey was the reason that total cholesterol and LDL cholesterol increased after the consumption of the artificial honey. However, the difference between the effects of artificial and natural honeys on cholesterol might be due to the presence of certain substances in natural honey able to reduce blood lipids in healthy and hyperlipidemic subjects. Further research is needed to determine what these putative substances may be. So we see a difference in how natural honey and artificial honey acts in our body. We just haven't figured out why yet. Very interesting. By the way, before we move on, please take a moment to click that subscribe button and turn on notifications to follow my channel, and also remember to follow me on Instagram at Viking Ingunn. Now let's take a look at a different sugar, the one we're all familiar with and the one most people will think of if you say sugar, namely table sugar. Table sugar is made up of a sugar called sucrose, which is a type of molecule that is actually made up of one glucose and one fructose molecule. So when broken down, it's basically just 50-50 glucose and fructose. So we could hypothesize that sucrose should have a similar effect on our body as honey. The study we've been talking about so far actually did look at sucrose and found that honey compared with sucrose caused lower elevation of plasma glucose levels in diabetics. So not the same response. And here's another study. From the abstract, we can see that this study from 1990 compared the glucose response up to 240 minutes after participants ingested honey or sucrose, and found that sucrose gave higher blood sugar readings than honey at every measurement, producing significantly greater glucose intolerance. Again, very interesting. Honey does not seem to be just sugar, in other words. But here's the catch. In this study, they compared sucrose with honey and found that they had pretty much the same effect. They both increased TG, for instance, which is not the same as we found in the first study where honey slightly decreased TG. So how can that be? Well, it's not possible to know for sure unless you do another study to clarify, though what stands out the most to me, and that makes a lot of sense, is that in this latter study, they did not use a natural raw honey. They used Dutch gold honey, which from what I can see is a pasteurized filtered honey, meaning it's been heated and processed. And you can really see the difference between natural raw honey and pasteurized honey. Pasteurized honey is usually a lot more transparent, smooth, and a lot more liquid in room temperature. And the thing is, when honey is pasteurized and filtered, a lot of the natural beneficial substances in honey may be destroyed and removed. And this could very well be the reason those two studies showed different results. So really, what we've seen here is that natural honey, which is a whole food, is not just sugar. And we can generalize this. Whole foods in general are not just a combination of the nutrients that we know. There's so much more to it. In honey, for instance, there are minerals and enzymes and possibly also other substances that we don't even know about yet. These nutrients and other substances interact in very complex ways with each other and with our body. And I don't think we even understand a fraction of it all. This is why it's so important to not only focus on specific nutrients, like for instance getting enough protein or vitamin A, B, C, etc., but to think about the whole foods themselves. And of course, on top of that, the processing the food has been through also matters, as we briefly discussed with respect to honey. So, when it comes down to it, it looks like honey, meaning real, natural, raw honey, is not the same as just sugar. It acts differently in our bodies and is actually a pretty great source of natural whole food carbs. That, of course, does not mean we should be eating a ton of it, though as a source of carbs, it's a great source. Now, there are lots of very interesting health benefits of honey, though I'll have to talk more about that in a different video. Now, if you haven't already done so, make sure you download my free guide called Hack Your Way Out of 3 Weight Loss Mistakes Almost Everyone Makes. In the guide, based on science, I show how it's possible to eat until you're full and still lose weight, and even burn more calories without exercising. You can download it right now for free at vikingingun.com. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if so, please take a moment to give it a thumbs up, a heart, or a like, depending on where you're watching from, and I'll see you in the next video.